Dear students, today we are going to discuss about semester 2 criticism and theory paper 1. I am most of the time providing you the syllabus, so it makes things easy to understand. Sometime even if you don't go through the syllabus, you can come to my channel, look at the syllabus, and this will give you first hand information. Now, why this is, we need to go for the syllabus because there are certain things, at least those texts which are prescribed, so we can actually focus on that. So today I'm going to discuss about the P.B. Shelley, A Defense of Poetry, English critical text edited by D.J. Enright and Ernest D. Chiquera. So this is what we are going to discuss. My concern is to just show you the syllabus so you can actually see it. Okay. I have found certain notes. I know you can also get it. It's nothing, nothing special, but I'm providing all those notes at one platform. So that will save your time. Just to save your time, we are doing this exercise. Now, let me come to the text. Okay, this is actually a notes, maybe IGNU, I guess. So P.B. Shelley, Defense of Poetry. So these are the objectives which are there. But it's a primary information, we can get it. So we are going to examine Shelley's view on defense of poetry. Now, Shelley, A Defense of Poetry was a reply, because this is a primary information, so it will definitely help you. Shelley's Defense of Poetry was a reply to the attack made by the contemporary Thomas Love Peacock, but we need to know little about the large context provided by Plato's attack on poetry and Sidney's apology for Sidney's apology came some 100 years later, but he did have Plato in mind all the time. So Plato had attacked poetry as being an image as and something which weaken reason and self-control. It appeals to the emotion, to the man's lower self. Poets think that they have knowledge of all subject, but that is far from being the actual case. Poetry is not a rational discourse, and it is valid means of nor it is a valid means of knowledge. This is what the Plato's idea about poetry is there. So that you have to keep in mind, and that's how Plato is, categorically declaring in the state, a state without poets, state free from poets. So that's a kind of serious offense, against poets. There are number of scholars who came and objected this. So in the line of this discussion, line of this debate, line of this criticism, first we see Plato, what Plato says. Then there are number of instances when we can quote Aristotle, which is not sharing the idea. He is against the idea of Plato. Then Sidney has given reply in, I think, 1581. Then Shelley's reply is there. In this continuation, we'll go for Arnold's reply as well. So right now we are in a debate, or the idea which is being given by the counter arguments given by Shelley. So Plato had attacked poetry as being an image of an image and something which weakens the reason itself, reason and self-control. It appeals to the emotion, to men's lower self. Poet thinks that they have knowledge of all subject, but it is far from being the actual case. Poetry is not a rational discourse, nor it is a valid means of knowledge. This is what's said by Plato. Then Sidney's arguments was that the poet is a maker. He does not imitate or express or discuss which already exist in. He invents new thing. The world invented or created by the poet is a better world than the real world. It is not the mere exercise of the imagination. Because the basic object is Plato calls is imitation. Plato calls poets as imitator. They imitate, they copy, they image. and in that way they use the false images. That was the objection that justified the poet's exercise of his imagination to create a better world. The imagination does not give us an insight into reality but an alternative reality and a supervisor, one at that. To Sidney's poetry is superior as a moral teacher to both philosophy and history because it does not deal with mere abstract position. A philosophy does, but with the concrete example, and its example are not tied to fact. It can make them more apt and convincing than anything found in history. The poet not only exceeds the philosophers in his ability to create the perfect example, but also in his ability to move the reader to follow the example. In 1980, Shelley's close friend and noted novelist Thomas Love Peacock, 1785 to 1866, wrote an essay entitled The Four Ages of Poetry, which appeared in a single issue of Literary Miscellany. According to Peacock, Thomas Love Peacock, poetry passes through four distinct ages comparable to four ages of man. These are the age of iron, in which everything is crude and untutored, the period of primitive and medieval folk ballad and romance, as in the period of infancy, the age of gold, in which natural genius is full blown, the period of epic and tragic form of the 5th century Athens and Renaissance Europe. Youth, the age of silver, in which the luxuriant growth of imitation is pure through rules, the period of Virgil and Lucretius of Dryden and Poe. Middle Ages, the age of bronze, in which poetry returns to an artificial implicity. Second childhood of extreme old age and declining classical period, the age of Wordsworth, Scott and Byron, others. Peacock asserts. So now let me just give you certain, these, what are the ages he's talking about. This will make you more, so he is talking about the four ages of poetry. And what are these four ages? Is according to Peacock, these are the age of iron. Okay, so first age of iron, in which everything is crude and untutored, and the period primitive of medieval folk ballad and romance in the period of infancy. Then the second is the age of gold, in which the natural genius is blown, and the period of epic and tragic form and 5th century Athens and Renaissance Europe. Then the age of silver, in which the luxuriant growth of imagination is burned through rules, the period of Virgil and Lucretius of Dryden and Poe. Then the middle age, the age of, and next is age of bronze, in which poetry returns to an artificial simplicity, second childhood of the extreme of old age, the declining classical period, and the age of Wordsworth, Scott and Byron. So, you got the point. One, here it is one. So, this one is age of iron. Okay, then the second number here, the second number goes, this is age of iron, age of gold, age of iron, age of gold, then age of silver, this is here, okay, age of silver, and then age of bronze. So here it is age of bronze, age of iron, age of gold, age of silver and age of bronze. Peacock asserts that as a civilization advanced, poetry declined until its pursuit became the waste of time for an intelligent and enlightened person whose time would be better spent in the study of natural and social science. The essay excited Shelley to what he called sacred rage. In several letters, Peacock himself, this is important to notice, sacred rage, okay. So this is what the sacred rage of Shelley. In several letters in Peacock himself, Shelley described as it a hearsay and undiscriminating censures upon the temple of immortal song. In reply, he wrote brilliant treatise, A Defense of Poetry, 1821. Defense of Poetry in 1821. Peacock, in his presumption, had taken up the defense of reason and enlightenment against primitive and primitivism and superstition. So what is this? On the basis of that, poetry is being criticized. That is the reason and enlightenment. Okay, and then the primitivism and superstition. So it is blamed that poetry is superstitious, it is primitive, okay, it is not in a very refined form of art, and it proposed or it propagates superstition. That's what the blames are being given. But the counter arguments are there that it is a reasonable, it's based on the reason, and it influenced the faculty of the enlightenment. Shelley turns the table on him. The grand fabric of human civilization is not the product of reason but the imagination, and not the reason who are makers history but men of imagination. So this is a significant point, reason and imagination. To establish his thesis, Shelley needed to define poetry, explain creative process and evaluation in terms of its influence on the life and individual and society. In his Shelley defense is retort to Peacock, rationalistic, cynical humor description of the decay and final disappearance of the poetry in an age of unity. Now, defining poetry, imagination and ideal order. A defense of poetry starts with the distinction between reason and analytics. Now, please, dear children, note this: reason and analytic operations of human mind. Reason and imagination. This whole paragraph will be devoted to these two points: reason and imagination. Okay, focus on that. Yes. Operation of human mind and imagination, the synthetic process. Reason enumerates a non-quality while imagination perceives and determines their virtue. Poetry is then defined in general sense the expression of imagination. Using Platonism as its infrastructure, Shelley asserts that imagination has an uncanny and mysterious context with ideal order apprehended by imagination. A poet participates in the eternal, the infinite, and one poem is that very image of life expressed in its eternal truth. This is to use the word poetry in a very word and loose sense, and Shelley does so deliberately. Poetry in its universal sense denotes all manifestations of the creative and poetical faculty in different spheres of life. Poets are not only the authors of language but also the institutions of law organizers of civil society, founder of the religious and inventors of the art of life, as long as they in their respective sphere approximate to the reflect in ideal order. Architecture, painting, music, dance, sculpture, philosophy and form of civil life are all expressed in the poetical faculty. So this is significantly important. I think you need to give almost 4 to 5 times reading to this paragraph, otherwise you will be missing very significant points. Please read them again and again. Now, human civilization are poets, and for that is what Shelley clearly implies. Those who are not gifted with the poetic creative faculty have neither made nor can ever make any contribution of human civilization. In a restricted sense, however, poetry is the expression of imagination and language, and thus, in Shelley's view, is the most ideal and effective expression. He narrows down the circle a little further by restricting the term to that form of writing which uses measured language. He dismisses the popular division of the poetry and prose as untenable because in 7 prose writers like Plato, Bacon use measured language and are poets. Thus, use of language is characterized by harmonious recurrence of this harmony, but though preferable is not essential to poetry. Similarly, the poet, because of their contact with their ideal order and their apprehensions of the beautiful, do not use language literally and metaphorically. Such metaphorical language loses its freshness with passage of time and is need to regular renewal. If no new poet should arise to create a fresh association with has been thus a disorganized language will be dead to all the noble purpose of human intercourse. And again, because poetry brings light and fire from the eternal region where the all winged faculty of calculations there not even soar. It is not like reasoning a power to be exerted according to the determination of the civil Uddavar. On the contrary, the poet had to depend on an involuntary inspiration. When imposition began, inspirations is already on the decline. Poetry tries to redeem its self-visibility of the divinity in human. Poetry differs from logic in this respect and is not subject to the control of consciousness and will. The first passage of the poetry are not result of labor and study, but the record of the best and happiest moments of inspiration. So now here I stop, and you can actually get the basic idea what we are trying. So this is how the reason and imagination, how the reason and imagination is significant. Because it's a small paragraph, we'll just come to it again. And if I could finish, let me just do. One of the poetry and radical moral transformation, the question of value. One of the maturest insight of Shelley is that moral system and ethical codes cannot by themselves effect a revolution. If it were so, the world would have been a paradise. For this change, the hearts and minds of the people would have to be prepared, lest the poetry in his view bring about this transformation. This is obvious a religious ideal and points to romantic predilection of claiming the poetry religious in function. We have its work out germinally in Wordsworth writing. Shelley reinforces it with a line of thinking culminate in Arnold's a replacement of religion by poetry. Poetry effects this transformation by means of imparting pleasure, not animal pleasure but pleasure of the higher and nobler kind, a union of wisdom and delight which arises by poet's contact and eternal and his ability to make his readers participate in the experience. In this way, poet awakens and strengthens the imagination and inculcates the greater moral force of love. The great secret of moral is love and going out of our own nature and identification of ourselves with the beautiful which exists in thought, action and person not our own. A man be greatly good must imagine intensely and comprehensively, must put himself in the place of another and many of the others. The pain and pleasure of this species must become his own. The great instrument of the moral good is the imagination. The poetry admires to the effective by acting upon the cause. So this is only one more paragraph. Let me just finish it. Thus, poetry which originate in imagination strengthens its faculty among those who are exposed to its influence. Poetry strengthens the faculty which is the organ of the moral nature of man. In the same manner, an exercise strengthens the limbs. It is ever needed to have the human personality and social fabric from the corruption and from being reduced to a tropid mass. Shelley substantiates his argument by attempting a brief survey of the role of poetry in human civilization. Poetry, he concludes, has always been behind all that is valuable in human history. In the modern age, however, it is role that has become more crucial, far from being useless. A peacock wrote, it is needed more than ever before today. The calculating faculty, that growing mechanism are corrupt and dehumanizing moods man. So these are, these are from the text itself, so you can actually quote on your own. And here then I rest my argument. So behind the apparent rhapsody, there is an ideological structure. Warshman has shown the Platonic concept that beneath the whole universe there is one regulative principle is the underlying theme of Shelley's argument. Hence, poetry is not mere art, it is vision, a vision of the perfect form of things. Of course, Shelley is taking about idea. For him, poetry becomes the expression as well as molding influence of civilization in its evolution and most primitive barbarism. He links up decadence and latter to decade in social value, for instance, in his censure and restoration of comedy of manners. Whenever the occasion of the idea order of the sincere fails, poetry falls from its heights. We would do well here to note that Shelley is not indulging in rhapsodic diachetism, but attributing on ontological and epistemological values in poetry. So, right. But the value of Shelley's defense lies not just in re-establishing poetry as a part of the fabric of society and process of history. As Wallach thinks, it is an attempt to refutation of the contempt of Peacock, who saw four ages: the iron, golden, silver, and brass. In the history of English poetry, who felt that the lake poets were in childhood phase primitive and medievalism. It brings out the instinctive values of poetic apprehension and quite a uniqueness of the language of poetry. The chief difficulty with defense is grandiose grandiloquent style and its extremely subjective assertion. The terminology is unmistakably romantic. We shall, however, discuss that it is not so vague or imprecise as it has been made out of. We bring to the empathetic imagination. It is a frame of reference belonging to an order not rational or positivistic but romantic. Shelley would have it that poetry has its origin in inspiration. Yet he always equally emphasized the need of unity and organization in poetry. It is not merely letting loose of the chaotic emotion. In Shelley's, like Coleridge, realities and values of meter and verification as factors, disciplining the process of emergence of poetry. Again, like other romantic critics, he makes no distinction between poet and poetry. Poetry becomes the quality that permeates the entire universe and not confined to rhythmic pattern in verse or to verbal structure. And his declaration, poets are the unacknowledged legislatures of the world, is the only extension of this sample principle. So that's how Shelley's defense of poetry is a defense of imagination against rationality. Poetry is the expression of imagination in language. The first passage of the poetry are the record and the best happiest moments of inspiration. Poetry imparts pleasure of a higher and nobler kind. Poetry can rescue civilization from doom, especially in time when the calculating faculty, growing mechanism construct and dehumanize man. So I stop here, and I think we have done all the significant parts of this. So you come to the video, see it again, listen it again, and subscribe the channel, share with your friends, and your subscription helped me to keep my moral and my